Picture this. You walk into someone's home for the first time, a friend of a friend, maybe a date, and the place is spotless. Not just tidy, spotless. The throw pillows are arranged with a precision that feels almost deliberate. The kitchen counter is completely clear except for a single potted plant, which is of course thriving. And somewhere deep in your gut, you feel this mix of emotions you didn't ask for. A little impressed, a little judged, and maybe, if you're being honest with yourself, a little curious about who this person actually is. Because here's what most of us assume. People with clean homes are either obsessive, or they don't have kids, or they have nothing better to do with their time. We write them off as control freaks or secretly boring people who've just given up on fun. But what if that story is almost completely wrong? What if the psychology behind keeping a clean, ordered space is way more fascinating and way more human than any of us give it credit for? That's exactly what we're getting into today. Let's start with the brain, because that's where everything actually begins. When you look at a messy room, your brain doesn't just see a messy room. It processes it as a series of unfinished tasks, a graveyard of incomplete loops, each one quietly demanding a slice of your mental attention. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. Our brains have a natural tendency to fixate on incomplete things more than completed ones. This is why you can't stop thinking about the awkward thing you said in a meeting 3 years ago. Your brain never got the done signal. Now apply that to your environment. Every pile of laundry, every stack of unopened mail, every dish left in the sink, it's an open loop, and your brain is running all of them in the background, like apps you forgot to close. You're not consciously aware of it, but it's draining your cognitive battery. Research out of UCLA actually found that the amount of cortisol, the stress hormone, in a person's body was directly correlated with the amount of clutter in their home. Women who described their homes as cluttered showed elevated cortisol throughout the entire day, not just while they were at home, all day. So people who keep their homes clean aren't just satisfying some neurotic need for order. In many cases, they've discovered, consciously or not, that a clean, ordered space is the most reliable way to quiet their nervous system. Their outer world is a direct translation of their inner one.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because not everyone who keeps a tidy home is doing it for the same reason. And this is the part most people miss entirely. There's a concept in psychology called locus of control, the degree to which a person believes they have agency over what happens in their life. People with a high internal locus of control believe they are the authors of their story. They believe their choices, habits, and efforts genuinely shape outcomes. And research consistently shows that people with this trait tend to maintain more organized, structured environments. For them, a clean home isn't about aesthetics, it's about agency. It's a daily, physical act of saying, I am in control of my world. Think about what happens when life feels chaotic, when you get a scary medical diagnosis, when a relationship falls apart, when work becomes an unmanageable beast. A lot of people respond by cleaning, obsessively even, scrubbing the bathroom at midnight, reorganizing the pantry when there are much bigger problems waiting. And we tend to judge this as avoidance, as denial, but there's something more nuanced happening. When the big things feel out of control, the small things become sanctuaries of agency. You can't fix the diagnosis, but you can fold these towels perfectly. You can't unsend that email, but this counter you can control. The clean home becomes an anchor. Now, there's another psychological archetype worth exploring here, the person who keeps their home clean not because of what it gives them, but because of what mess takes away. This ties into something called ego depletion, the idea that willpower and decision-making are finite resources. You wake up with a full tank, and every choice you make throughout the day drains a little from it. By the time evening rolls around, you're running on fumes. This is why brilliant, disciplined people make impulsive decisions at night that they'd never make in the morning. Here's where the tidy home earns its keep. When your environment is organized and predictable, you're not burning decision-making fuel on low-level chaos. You know where your keys are. You're not wading through a pile of clothes to find the shirt you need. You're not mentally cataloging the dishes you'll have to wash before you can cook. Every one of those micro decisions you don't have to make is energy preserved for something that actually matters. Some of the most productive people in history, from Steve Jobs to Albert Einstein, were notorious for simplifying their environments and daily routines. The external simplicity wasn't a quirk, it was a strategy. And then there's the personality dimension. The Big Five personality model, one of the most well-validated frameworks in psychology, includes a trait called conscientiousness, the tendency toward organization, reliability, and self-discipline. Highly conscientious people are statistically more likely to maintain clean homes, meet deadlines, and follow through on long-term goals. But here's what's beautiful about this. Conscientiousness isn't a fixed destiny, it's a practiced behavior. Habits shape the trait as much as the trait shapes the habits.
In other words, every time someone chooses to make their bed in the morning, every time they return a glass to the cabinet instead of leaving it on the coffee table, they are not just cleaning, they are rehearsing a version of themselves. They are telling their brain through repeated action who they are. The clean home is less a reflection of a personality type and more a performance of an identity. And over time, the performance becomes the person. This is actually backed up by research from Wendy Wood at USC, who found that about 43% of our daily behaviors are performed out of habit, not conscious decision. We don't decide to be tidy, we practice it until it decides for us. There's one more layer I want to peel back, because I think it's the most human one of all. For some people, a clean and beautiful home is an act of love, for themselves and for others. There's a warmth in the idea that the people who walk through your door will feel welcomed, cared for, comfortable. That the space you inhabit says something about how you value your life and the life you share with others. Many cultures embed this deeply. The Japanese concept of ma, which roughly translates to the meaning found in empty space. The Scandinavian philosophy of hygge, which centers coziness, simplicity, and intentional living. The Danish concept isn't about sterility, it's about creating an environment so warm and thoughtful that it becomes an extension of genuine care. So, if you're someone who keeps your home clean, maybe pause before you let anyone call you uptight or boring or obsessive. What you're actually doing is multifaceted and deeply psychological. You're managing your nervous system. You're asserting agency in a world that often feels like it's happening to you. You're conserving mental energy for what actually matters. You're rehearsing discipline through daily ritual. And you may be creating, quietly and without fanfare, a sanctuary for yourself, for the people you love. And if you're the opposite, if your home is closer to organized chaos, if laundry lives on the chair and dishes accumulate with a kind of stubborn patience, that's worth exploring too. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Because often, the mess we live in is the mess we haven't yet decided to address. And the moment you make that decision, even in one small corner of one room, something shifts, not just in the space, in you. So I'd love to know, does your environment reflect your inner world? Does cleaning feel like control, or does clutter feel like freedom? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to hear how your space and your psychology connect. And if this kind of deep dive into the way humans actually work is your thing, stick around. There's a lot more where this came from.